Welcome to FP&A Coach. Today we're going to walk through volume price analysis and how both FP&A professionals and people who interact with finance teams can use this analysis to understand more deeply what's happening within revenue within their organization. Before we dive into the analysis, like what is volume price analysis? A way to think of it about it, it's a way to decompose the revenue changes into both volume and price effects. So you can see what a change in price and what a change in volume drives to overall revenue. And then from there, you can identify growth drivers and risks associated with this. But volume just doesn't have to be number of units. It could be something else as well, such as revenue when talking about revenue and COGS. So we can also do this type of analysis to understand the impact on gross margin. And then from there, we can also run sensitivities and see what type of scenarios may happen to what may affect profitability down the road. So getting into it, we'll start with a high level example about just dealing with revenue units and figuring out what the average selling price is. So here I have both revenue and units for two products, product A, product B. These numbers are all made up for a fictional example, but then for this analysis, we'll have to calculate the average selling price. So for this, all we do is simply just divide the revenue by the number of units. And for each one of these sections, for revenue, units, and average selling price, I have a total column, a variance, and a variance percentage column, just to understand what magnitude we're talking about with each one of these items. And up top is the section that we'll work on together today. So this is the volume price analysis. So we'll look at both product A and product B, and then we'll also add those volume and price impacts together so we can see for the total business what type of impact is happening on both volume and price for the business. So for volume, what we'll do for volume is we'll look at this unit difference. So this is saying that we shipped 120 units, we budgeted 150 units, but there are actually only, so that led to a delta of negative 30 units. So we'll take that negative 30. And what we'll do is we'll multiply that by the actual selling price. So we're looking at what we're trying to isolate is the difference of what we could have sold versus budget versus the actual selling price that we're able to recognize. So we're trying to isolate the volume aspect within this calculation. So we'll go ahead and just hit enter. We get 5,000. The analysis isn't complete yet, so we'll go on to the price. And it's almost the inverse for price than what we just did for units. So for price, we have this average selling price variance down here, where for product A, it's $53. What we'll do from there is we'll take that $53 times the budget amount. And the reason it's the budget amount is so we can figure out what similarly to before where we showed the unit variance and we took the actuals, we need to offset that by taking the budgeted amount so we can isolate just the price variance for actuals. And there we get 8,000. So that's for product A. And you'll know when you have this analysis correct when this total in this column here ties to the revenue variance. That's a very straightforward way and a good check on your work to make sure that this analysis is being completed correctly. So because everything's lined up the same, all I need to do for a product B is just copy and paste down. So you'll see the unit variance times the actual selling price. And then you'll also see the budgeted units times the price variance as well. And similarly, the check here is negative 8,000 and we have 8,000 here. So what we can see for this business is from a volume standpoint, we're actually able to sell more units, and that led to almost $7,000 more of revenue than what we had budgeted. And then price-wise, we had compression on price, so we actually had $12,000 fewer sold on price. So that led to an overall revenue impact of 5,000. So when you just look at this and you see a $5,000 revenue variance, now you can double click in there further and say, oh, actually, we actually sold more units. It was our pricing that drove that revenue miss for us in this period. When comparing this, this doesn't always have to be actuals versus budget. This could be month over month change, year over year change, whatever time period or scenarios that you're trying to analyze. As long as they're like for like, you can analyze them together. So that's for revenue in units. What you can also do is do the analysis for profitability, so margin percentage. So what we'll look at here is a product margin example. So before we were using units as the volume metric. Here, what we're going to do is use the revenue as the volume metric. So here for volume, we're going to take revenue times this product margin percentage, the actual product margin percentage. That will tell us how much more revenue we sold at the actual margin contributed to the overall margin of the business. And similarly for price, what we'll do here because we're dealing with basis points, and I like to note out my basis points here. What we'll just do is we'll do this actual margin minus the budgeted margin times the budgeted price. So we're getting the variance times the price. And here we get $1,000. Again, the one check to keep in mind is this $1,000 should tie to whatever metric you're trying to analyze. So in this scenario, it's product A's variance of $1,000 here. So those tie out. Similarly, you can copy and paste this down and get the same type of variance here. So 10,000 variance there ties to 10,000 variance here, 9,000 overall for the business. And that's what we would get in a standard variance analysis here. So when looking at it this way, earlier we are talking about units, here we're talking about revenue. So we're saying revenue was contributing to $2,300 worth of a lower product margin. So we just didn't sell as much revenue as what we had expected. And the price also had an impact on, this is a separate exercise from the previous tab. Price also had an impact on the margins that we were able to see, but had about two-thirds of the impact on total margin. So you have both pricing pressures, and then you also have volume pressures in the form of revenue in this scenario, and that gets you to a total variance of $9,000. And that's an introduction to volume price analysis. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel, and keep tuned for future videos to learn about more FP&A type of concepts and how you can apply this to your day-to-day work.